For analysis on the potential impact of the expected tariffs, joining us now is David Dunn, a professor of international politics at the University of Birmingham. Professor, thanks so much for speaking to us. Do you foresee that countries heavily reliant on trade with the United States will bow to pressure from Washington, depending on how Trump plays out these tariffs and what he decides to do tomorrow?
Yes, I think partly what Trump is about is driven by ideology and belief in tariffs, and part of it's a negotiating strategy. And he hopes that there will be reciprocal concessions. However, there are large sections of the American economy which are dependent on imports that cannot be very easily dealt with in that manner. For example, the integration and reliance of the car industry in North America is such that there can be very little concessions made by the Canadians and the Mexicans and the manufacture of parts or cars in those countries, which please the Americans. And therefore, we're going to see a huge amount of disruption and uncertainty in those markets until we find that the actual level that those tariffs will be imposed at. It may be that it sticks at 25, or it may be that there is negotiation that brings those down a bit, but there will be disruption, and that there will be dislocation as a consequence.
Disruption and uncertainty, two terms synonymous with Donald Trump. But he is also someone who loves a good deal. He loves to negotiate. But when it comes to the politics of it all, do these tariffs and possible trade wars push countries closer towards a form of nationalism, the idea of consumers buying more products made in their own country, very similar to what we're seeing in Canada, where many American products are being boycotted and people are encouraging each other to only buy from Canada?
Yes, the whole thrust of American politics under Trump is that narrow nationalism. America is moving away from internationalism in its foreign policy, and in particular in its trade policy. And what that does is two things. It creates nationalism in national markets, but it also actually encourages other nations like India and indeed Canada and Australia and large parts of Europe to actually seek other markets. So they're moving away from the unreliable American market. So America is becoming more of a national market by design, but also a one by avoidance, which will be detrimental to the US economy, but also to those economies that go through periods of adjustment. We can expect a recession in Mexico. We can expect a hard hit to the Canadian economy, which are so integrated and so reliant. Until that is, of course, the Trump administration comes to its end, because there is no consensus in America that supports this policy. And the likelihood is there will be an indication to try and move towards the previous policy, where once Trump is done. Whether people trust America after that is another matter entirely, of course, because what Trump is doing is creating, as you say, uncertainty, unpredictability, but a lack of trust of America as a trading partner and indeed as a world power. And that is fundamentally a change in the way in which America has been viewed for the last 80 years. So it's very damaging to everyone's economy, but also, of course, to America's economy and reputation too.
And many countries may not be wanting to take a chance in terms of waiting another 4 years until the Trump presidency is over, especially if a Trump ally does come into power after that. But this trade war is also seeing alliances possibly strengthened or even changed. I mean, China, Japan and South Korea held their first economic dialogue in 5 years.
Yes, I mean, China is loving what's going on in America because, by comparison, China seems to be a stable and a reliable and a trustworthy trading partner. They're not rapidly changing things or creating uncertainty. I mean, just now, no one precisely knows what Trump will announce tomorrow. And even when he announces it tomorrow, no one knows whether he'll stick with that or whether it's part of a trading strategy. So, yes, there will be changes in patterns of trade. Other countries will benefit from that. and the Americans will be losing out as a consequence. I mean, some firms will choose to try and relocate their manufacturing in the US because the US market is the biggest market. But actually, that will take years to do that. And of course, the problem with that is that you don't even know whether those tariffs and those added costs of making things in America will be necessary if these policies are reversed by a next administration.
Does this in any way strengthen domestic sentiment in the United States? Because many people who are in support of Trump see this or see him as bringing jobs back to America, bringing back manufacturing, even though something like manufacturing takes months, years to actually get going.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I mean, what's remarkable, despite the disruption, is that his support among his voters has remained strong. They're supportive of the idea. Whether they're as supportive of that once the inflation kicks in and cars cost 25% more than they did previously, and food and everything else goes up in price is another matter. Trump won the election by managing to persuade a gullible American electorate that actually he could bring prices down, not just bring down inflation, bring down prices. And of course, what we've seen is prices have gone up, and they're likely to go up even further on a whole raft of goods, including basic foodstuffs and fuel and oil and gas, as well as manufactured goods, as a consequence of his addiction to tariffs and this very disruptive policy.
Oh, we await for Liberation Day on Wednesday. Professor David Dunn, good to speak to you. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.